Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are pulling a book off the shelf that, I mean, let's be honest, most people probably associate with their grandmother's house or maybe a really dusty Sunday school prize.
Right, yeah, or just something you're forced to read in an intro to lit class.
Exactly. It's got this reputation for being archaic, maybe a little dry, and certainly very old-fashioned.
It is definitely old. I mean, we are talking about 1678 here.
Right. But here's the thing. When I actually started reading the source material for today's dive, I didn't find a dry, dusty sermon at all.
You found something else entirely.
I found a psychological horror story. I mean, I found dragons and giants and dungeons and a main character who is basically having a complete mental breakdown.
That's really the perfect way to frame it. We are talking, of course, about John Bunyan's The Pilgrim'S Progress, and you are completely right to push past that old-fashioned reputation.
Yeah, because if you don't...
If you treat this book as just a cute fable about a guy taking a hike, you miss the raw, gritty reality of what Bunyan was actually doing. Because he wasn't writing this from a comfortable armchair in a university somewhere.
No, he wasn't. And that's the first thing we really need to set the stage with for you listening. The source material highlights this right at the very beginning. The narrator says he fell asleep in a den.
Right.
Now, to modern ears, a den sounds cozy. You know, like a man cave with a nice recliner.
It was anything but cozy. Bunyan's den was the Bedford County Jail. He wrote this masterpiece while serving a 12-year prison sentence.
12 years. That is just, that's a lifetime in that era.
And we have to understand why he was there because it completely colors every single page of this book. He wasn't a thief. He wasn't a murderer.
Right.
He was a nonconformist. He was arrested under the Conventicle Act of 1664.
Which did what exactly?
It basically made it illegal to hold a religious meeting outside the formal structure of the Church of England. If you were caught preaching to a group without the state's permission, you went to jail.
So he was a prisoner of conscience.
Exactly. And the conditions were brutal. He was separated from his wife and his 4 children. And one of those children, his daughter Mary, was actually blind.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He had to make shoelaces in his jail cell just to earn enough pennies to keep his family from starving on the outside.
That is heartbreaking.
It really is. So when we read about the anxiety, the fear, the absolute obsession with fleeing from wrath in this book, we have to remember the context. This is a man who has been stripped of everything but his own mind.
He's trapped.
He's projecting his massive internal struggle onto the page because he can't go anywhere physically. His body is locked up, so his mind goes on this epic, terrifying journey.
That context just changes the entire opening scene for me. So the book opens with this narrator dreaming. And in the dream, he sees a man.
Right.
Let's talk about this protagonist. He's usually called Christian, but at the very start, he's just referred to as a man in rags.
Yes. And he's standing in a very specific posture. He's facing away from his own house. He has a book in his hand, and this is the crucial image. A great burden upon his back.
The burden. This is really the engine of the entire plot. And I want to get specific here for a second because this isn't just a heavy backpack that he can shrug off when he gets tired.
No, definitely not. In the text, it's treated almost like a tumor or a terrible growth. It is a physical weight, but it represents a deep spiritual reality.
Right.
The burden is the crushing realization of his own sin and the judgment that he believes is coming for him.
And how does he suddenly realize this? It's from the book he's holding, right? Which is the Bible.
Yes. As he reads it, the burden actually feels heavier. He realizes that he is condemned. And this isn't just guilt in the modern sense, like feeling bad about a mistake you made at work.
Yeah, it's not, oh, I forgot to call my mom on her birthday.
Exactly. This is an existential crisis. He realizes that the entire status quo of his life, his city, his routine is leading him directly to destruction.
And his reaction is incredibly visceral. He doesn't just get a little sad or pensive. The text says he weeps and trembles. He actually breaks out with his lamentable cry, asking, "What shall I do?"
It is absolute panic.
The pure panic.
And he tries to hide it at first. Like anyone would, he goes home to his wife and children and tries to just keep it together.
Put on a brave face.
Right. But he can't. He eventually breaks down and tells them, "I am undone by reason of a burden that lies hard upon me."
And then he drops the real bombshell.
He does. He tells them that their city, literally called the City of Destruction, is going to be burned with fire from heaven.
Okay, so here is where I really struggled with the text a bit, and I'd love your take on it. He tells his family this terrifying apocalyptic news. And their reaction Honestly, it felt very modern to me.
How so?
Well, they don't ask about the theology behind what he's saying. They don't look up at the sky and panic. They basically just think he's lost his marbles.
They think he is suffering from a quote-unquote frenzy.
A frenzy.
Yeah.
A mental breakdown. And their solution is just so typical. They don't try to understand the spiritual crisis at all.
Well, they don't.
The text says they hope that sleep might settle his brains.
Yeah.
They essentially try to medicate his soul with a nap.
It is a form of gaslighting in a way. They're telling him you're not having a spiritual awakening, you're just overly tired. Go to bed, honey, you'll feel better in the morning.
Right, just sleep it off.
It highlights the extreme isolation of the awakened soul. To his family, the sun is shining, business is good, everything is completely fine. But to Christian, the sky is on fire.
He is living in a totally different reality than the people he loves most.
Exactly. And when the nap doesn't work,
Then they turn to harshness, right?
they do. They start deriding him, chiding him. They think if they bully him enough or mock him, he'll snap out of it.
Like tough love.
Exactly. But that just drives him further away. He starts walking solitarily in the fields, just reading his book and crying out over and over, "What must I do to be saved?"
This is the critical moment of decision. He's all alone in a field. The text says he looks like he wants to run, but he's standing completely still. Why? Because he doesn't know which way to go.
That paralysis is key. Awareness of a problem doesn't automatically give you the solution. He knows he desperately needs to escape the burden, but he has absolutely no direction. And that is when Evangelist enters.
I love this character. He just sort of appears out of nowhere. He's the guide archetype. He walks up and asks the man, "Why are you crying?"
And the man explains he's condemned to die and he's not willing to do it. And Evangelist does something really interesting here.
Yeah, he doesn't say, "Here, let me take that burden off for you."
No, he can't. That's a very important theological point Bunyan is making. A human teacher, even a pastor or an evangelist, cannot actually remove the guilt of sin.
They can only point the way.
Right. Evangelist hands him a parchment scroll that says, "Fly from the wrath to come."
And then he points across this incredibly wide field. He asks Christian, "Do you see yonder wicket gate?"
And Christian says no.
Which is such a brilliant, realistic detail. He's desperately looking for salvation. But his vision is so clouded he can't even see the entrance.
His spiritual vision is totally obscured by his condition. So Evangelist adjusts his directions. He says, "Okay, do you see yonder shining light?"
And Christian squints and says, "I think I do."
"I think I do."
That's all the certainty he gets. Just, "I think I do."
That's the reality of faith, especially in the 17th century, but really in any century. It's not always a lightning bolt of absolute clarity. Sometimes it's just a faint glimmer in the distance.
Wow.
Evangelist tells him to keep his eye fixed on that light, go directly toward it, and eventually he will see the gate.
So Christian starts to run. But we have to pause here because this next part is, well, it's ethically challenging for a modern reader.
It certainly is.
He starts running from his own front door. His wife and children see him, and they are screaming for him to come back. They're begging him. And the text says he actually puts his fingers in his ears.
It is a very jarring image.
Jarring. I mean, it sounds fanatical. If we saw this on the news today, a guy abandoning his blind daughter and his wife because a voice told him to run toward a light, we'd call the police.
We'd say he's joined a cult.
Exactly. How are we supposed to root for a protagonist who does this?
That is the exact tension Bunyan is playing with, and it's where we have to remind ourselves of the rules of allegory.
Okay, let's break that down.
If you read this as a literal novel about a dad leaving for cigarettes and never coming back, then yes, Christian is a monster.
Right.
But Bunyan isn't writing a domestic drama. He's writing a map of the internal soul.
So the family isn't just a literal family in this context.
Right. In the allegory, the family represents the attachments to the worldly life. Even the good, noble attachments that prevent you from seeking ultimate truth.
Ah, I see.
Bunyan is making a hard, uncompromising point. If the choice ultimately comes down to your social comfort, your relationships, and your eternal soul, you have to choose the soul.
That is a brutal calculus, though.
It is brutal, but remember Bunyan's own life.
Right. The jail.
He was in prison. He could have gone home to his blind daughter at any time. All he had to do was promise the local magistrate that he would stop preaching.
Wow. He had the key to his own cell, basically.
He did. He chose to stay in prison. He chose his conscience over the immediate comfort and provision of his family. He actually lived this horrific scene.
So putting his fingers in his ears is a metaphor for shutting out the emotional manipulation that tries to pull you back into a state of spiritual denial.
Exactly. He's plugging his ears and shouting, life, life, eternal life. He completely refuses to look back. It's a total clean break.
And of course, human nature being what it is, the neighbors come out to try and stop him. Bunyan gives us two characters here, right at the start, that represent the two most common ways people react to someone taking a radical leap of faith.
Obstinate and pliable.
Their names tell you exactly who they are. Obstinate is the guy who just thinks you're a complete idiot.
He represents stubborn, cynical resistance. He literally calls Christian a misled, fantastic fellow.
A fantastic fellow meaning living in a fantasy, right?
Yeah, exactly. He represents the person who is openly hostile to faith, or really any kind of radical personal change. He argues, he mocks, and when he realizes Christian won't budge, he just storms off in a huff.
But pliable is a completely different story. Pliable is, well, he's squishy.
Pliable represents the person who is very easily swayed by emotion or excitement. He listens to Christian talk about the crowns of glory and the garments that shine like the sun, and he thinks, wow, that sounds great, count me in.
So he's in it for the rewards.
Yeah.
He's not running from a burden like Christian is, he's running toward a prize.
And that underlying distinction is fatal, because they haven't gone far at all before they hit the very first major obstacle on the road.
The Slough of Despond.
Yes.
Even the name sounds absolutely miserable. Slough of Despond. It's basically a massive bog or a swamp right in the middle of the plain.
And because they are talking and not paying attention to the path, they both fall right into the mud.
They are just wallowing in the dirt. And this is exactly where the difference between Christian and Pliable becomes incredibly obvious.
Pliable gets angry immediately. He spits mud out of his mouth and says, is this the happiness you told me of? He feels scammed.
Right. He signed up for shining garments, not swamp water.
So he struggles out of the side of the swamp that is nearest to his own house, and he just runs back home. He quits the very moment it gets hard.
Because he didn't have the burden. He didn't have that existential desperation driving him forward.
Exactly. But Christian, he's in much deeper trouble. He's actually sinking.
Why is he sinking when Pliable didn't?
Because of the massive weight on his back. The burden makes the swamp lethal for him. He tries to get out, but notice the text says he struggles toward the side of the swamp that is nearest the wicket gate.
So he's still moving forward even while he's literally drowning in mud.
He is, and then a man named Help appears and manages to pull him out.
And once he's out, Christian asks a question that I think anyone would ask in that situation.
Yeah.
He says basically, why isn't this place fixed? This is the main road to the gate. Why hasn't the king just paved over this swamp?
And the answer Help gives him is profound. He says this swamp is caused by the fears, doubts, and discouraging apprehensions that naturally arise when a sinner is first awakened to their state.
Help says 20,000 carloads of wholesome instructions have been dumped in there over the centuries, but it remains a slough.
Because you can't just pave over deep guilt. You can't fix the crushing feeling of despondency with a quick self-help quote or some good advice.
It just swallows the good advice whole.
Right. It's a natural drainage point for the filth of conviction. Bunyan is telling the reader that feeling depressed, feeling stuck, feeling like you're sinking is a completely normal part of the early spiritual journey.
It's not a mistake on the path. It's a feature of the path.
Precisely.
Okay, so Christian gets out. He's muddy. He's shaken up. And this is where the plot really thickens. He meets someone who, honestly, to a modern reader, seems incredibly sensible. Mr. Worldly Wise Man.
Ah, yes. The villain who absolutely does not look like a villain.
He looks like a high-end life coach.
Yeah.
He sees Christian covered in mud, clearly stressed out, carrying this massive burden, and he basically says, buddy, you are doing this the hardest way possible.
Worldly Wiseman represents a very specific theological trap. Moralism. He tells Christian, who told you to go on this dangerous journey, evangelist. That guy is an extremist. Wow. There are lions that way. There's hunger and death that way.
Which, to be fair to Wiseman, is entirely true.
It is true. The wicket gate path is incredibly dangerous, as we'll see.
But then he offers this very tempting alternative. He says, I know a way to get rid of that burden that is safe, it's easy, and it's close by.
Yeah.
He points him to the village of morality.
Yes.
And he tells him to seek out a gentleman named Legality, or if he's not home, his son, Civility.
And the names here are the entire key to understanding the trap. Legality represents the idea that you can save yourself by just keeping the law, by being a good person.
Earning your way out of the burden.
Right? Exactly. And civility represents just being polite, being socially acceptable, paying your taxes, not making a fuss. Wiseman is fundamentally saying you don't need a savior. You don't need the bloody, dangerous cross.
You just need to follow the rules and be a decent, upstanding citizen.
And you can live happily with your family in the village.
Which sounds so attractive. I mean, who wouldn't want that deal? Why is that such a dangerous trap in Bunyan's eyes?
Because of the nature of the burden. Remember what the burden actually is. It's the accumulated record of his sin and guilt. Can being polite today erase the fact that you've already broken the moral law yesterday?
I guess not. It just adds polite on top of guilty.
Precisely. And that's shown so vividly when Christian actually takes the advice and tries to go there. He leaves the main path and heads toward the village of morality, but to get there, he has to pass right by a specific hill, Mount Sinai.
The mountain where Moses famously received the 10 Commandments.
Right. And in the story, as he gets close to the hill, the geometry goes weird. The mountain starts to physically hang over the road. It looks like it's going to collapse and crush him.
And flashes of fire start erupting from it. The burden suddenly feels twice as heavy. This part is genuinely terrifying. Why is the mountain of the law attacking him?
Because that's exactly what the law does to a sinner who tries to use it for their own salvation.
How do you mean?
If you go to the 10 Commandments and say, I'm going to use you to prove that I'm actually a good person, the commandments will scream back at you, no, you are not. You lied, you coveted, you failed.
So the closer he gets to legality, the heavier the realization of his illegality becomes.
The law amplifies guilt.
Yeah.
It never removes it. It's a mirror showing you the dirt on your face, but it's not a towel to wash it off.
So worldly wise man didn't send him to a spa. He sent him to an execution.
He sent him to the literal one place in the universe that cannot help him. And when Evangelist suddenly returns and finds Christian cowering under the flaming mountain, he's furious.
Evangelist gives him a severe rebuke. He exposes worldly wise man as an alien, trying to turn Christian out of the true way.
He says Wiseman's goal was to make the cross seem odious or hateful to him.
He tells Christian very plainly, by the deeds of the law, no man living can be rid of his burden. You just can't work your burden off. You have to have it supernaturally taken off.
Christian is terrified at this point. He thinks he's blown it completely, that he's disqualified. But Evangelist corrects him, puts him back on the narrow path, and tells him to go straight to the wicket gate. No more detours.
So Christian runs back to the path. He finally reaches the wicket gate and knocks. Over the gate, there's an inscription that says, "Knock and it shall be opened."
Yes.
A man named Goodwill comes to open the gate.
Yeah.
But this is a really jarring moment for the reader. As soon as the gate cracks open, Goodwill reaches out, grabs Christian, and yanks him inside violently.
It's almost like an assault. Christian is stunned. He's like, what is that about?
Yeah, I'd be terrified.
Goodwill explains that right nearby, there is a strong castle owned by Beelzebub. And from that castle, they constantly shoot arrows at people who are standing right in front of the gate trying to kill them before they can safely cross the threshold.
That is such a vivid picture of spiritual warfare. The idea that the very moment you are closest to safety is the exact moment you are most heavily targeted and under attack.
Exactly. The enemy doesn't bother with people sleeping in the city of destruction. He targets the ones knocking on the gate.
So now Christian is inside. He's officially on the narrow way. But note this crucial detail. He still has the massive burden on his back.
Right.
Passing through the gate didn't remove it. You'd think, okay, I'm in the club now, problem solved.
But Goodwill tells him explicitly, be content to bear it until thou come to the place of deliverance, meaning the cross is still ahead.
First, he needs some serious instruction. He is sent to the interpreter's house.
Which is essentially a theological training ground for new pilgrims. The interpreter shows him several scenes, almost like living visual aids, to teach him core truths.
There are a few scenes there that really stood out to me. One is the dusty parlor.
Yes, the dusty parlor. Christian sees a large room completely full of dust, which the interpreter explains represents original sin and corruption.
A man comes in and starts sweeping vigorously, and the dust just flies everywhere, absolutely choking Christian. He can't breathe.
And the interpreter explains that the man sweeping is the law. The law can stir up sin, it can reveal how dirty the room is, but it actually can't clean it. It just makes the corruption choke you.
Then a damsel comes in and sprinkles water all over the room. The dust settles immediately and can be easily swept away. The water represents the gospel.
It's a beautiful, elegant illustration of grace. But Bunyan doesn't stay in the light for long. Then there's the man in the iron cage.
This is the darkest part of the interpreter's house, without a doubt.
It is pure psychological horror.
Christian sees a man sitting in a literal iron cage in a dark room. He's looking down at the ground, sighing as if his heart would break. Christian asks, "Who are you?" And the man replies, I am a man of despair.
He was once a, quote, professor, unquote, which in Puritan terms meant a professing believer. He seemed to be on the right path. He thought he was going to the celestial city.
But then what happened?
He tells Christian that he laid the reins upon the neck of his lusts. He willfully sinned against the light he had been given. And now he fully believes he cannot repent. He is trapped in the iron cage of his own hardness of heart.
He actually tells Christian, God has denied me repentance. It serves as this massive, terrifying warning to Christian.
The message is essentially watch and be sober. You can't just play games with this journey. There are real permanent consequences.
So with that terrifying warning ringing in his ears, Christian runs up the highway. The road is fenced on either side by a wall called salvation. And finally he comes to a place somewhat ascending. There stands a cross. And right below it, a sepulcher or a tomb.
This is the climax of his initial quest.
As Christian reaches the cross, something miraculous happens. The burden simply loosens on its own. It slides off his back, tumbles down the hill, and falls right into the mouth of the tomb.
And he sees it no more.
And Christian weeps. But this time, unlike in the slough, they are tears of immense joy. He says he has given me rest by his sorrow and life by his death.
It's the absolute central moment of the Christian faith, visualized in narrative form.
And immediately, these three shining ones, essentially angels, appear to him. They strip him of his smelly rags, they give him beautiful new clothes, and they give him a roll with a seal on it.
That role is critical for the rest of the story. It's his personal assurance of salvation. It's the certificate that he will absolutely need to present at the final gates of the celestial city to prove he entered the right way.
It represents the Holy Spirit's seal on his life.
Yes.
So burden is finally gone. He has new clothes. His golden ticket is in his hand. He gives 3 leaps for joy and starts singing. As a reader, you'd think, okay, it's smooth sailing from here on out.
But of course, Bunyan knows the human heart better than that. The dangers don't vanish. They just completely change their form.
Right. Not long after, he comes across 3 men fast asleep in fetters beside the road. Simple sloth and presumption.
Christian tries desperately to wake them up. He warns them about the roaring lion that prowls around, but they just completely blow him off.
Simple says, I see no danger. Sloth just says a little more sleep.
It's tragic, but he realizes he has to keep moving. He can't force them awake. And then he sees something really strange. 2 guys come tumbling over the wall on the side of the road.
They didn't come through the wicket gate.
No, they bypassed it entirely. Their names are Formalist and Hypocrisy.
These 2 are fascinating to me. They tell Christian they're from the land of vainglory. And their argument to him is, look, the wicket gate is just way too far away. We just took a shortcut over the wall. We're on the exact same path now, just like you. What does it matter how we got here?
They are relying entirely on custom and tradition. They actually say, we have a custom of doing this for 1,000 years.
But Christian completely challenges them. He says, you walk by the rude working of your fancies. I walk by the rule of my master. He points out that if you don't enter by the door, you are fundamentally a thief and a robber.
And they just laugh at him. They think he's being rigid. But their shortcut philosophy is immediately tested at the very next obstacle, the hill of difficulty.
The path goes straight up a brutally steep hill. But there are 2 other ways at the bottom that seem to go around the base, one to the left and one to the right. The roads are literally called danger and destruction.
Formalist and Hypocrisy look at that steep hill in the middle and say, no thanks, we'll take the bypass.
So they take the easy roads. One gets completely lost in a dark wood, and the other stumbles in a field of dark mountains and falls. They are never seen again.
Shortcuts lead to destruction. Christian, however, starts climbing the hard way, and it is punishing work. He goes from running to walking to eventually clamber up on his hands and knees.
But there is an arbor, a little resting place built halfway up the hill by the Lord of the Hill. Christian sits down to rest. He pulls out his beautiful roll to read it for comfort.
But then he makes a huge mistake.
He falls asleep.
A sinful sleep in the daytime, as Bunyan calls it. And while he is deeply asleep, his hand relaxes and the roll falls out of his grasp.
He wakes up startled when it's almost nightfall. He speeds to the very top of the hill and suddenly meets 2 men running in the opposite direction, running down the hill.
Timorous and mistrust.
They are absolutely terrified. They tell Christian, the farther we go, the more danger we meet. There are lions just ahead on the path, and they just run past him back toward the bottom.
Christian is understandably afraid. He reaches into his coat for his roll to comfort himself with his assurance.
And it's gone.
The panic returns instantly. He realizes with horror that he lost it while he was sleeping in the arbor.
This represents the real consequence of spiritual sloth.
Exactly. He has to go all the way back down the steep hill he just climbed, looking frantically for the scroll in the fading twilight, weeping and sorrowing the entire time.
He has to tread those agonizingly hard steps 3 times instead of just once, up, down, and up again.
He finds it eventually under the bench, but now it's pitch black night. And he remembers what Timorous and Mistrust said about the lions.
Right. He approaches the Palace Beautiful, which is a lodge built to shelter pilgrims. But the path narrows into a tight pass, and there they are, 2 massive lions blocking the way.
He pauses. He's terrified and actually about to turn back, but the porter at the lodge, a man named Watchful, calls out to him in the dark.
He yells, "Is thy strength so small? Fear not the lions, for they are chained."
They are chained.
But, and this is the incredible catch to the scene, the chains are precisely long enough that if you stray even an inch to the edge of the path, they can reach you and tear you apart.
You have to walk directly in the exact middle of the narrow path. You have to hear them roaring ferociously just inches from your ear and trust entirely that the unseen chains will hold them back.
It is a massive, terrifying test of faith.
And he passes it. He makes it past the roaring lions and is warmly welcomed into the Palace Beautiful.
There he meets 4 incredible female characters: discretion, prudence, piety, and charity. It's a beautiful time of fellowship and rest.
They talk, they eat, and crucially, they equip him in the armory.
Right? They show him the furniture of the Lord, like Moses' rod and Gideon's pitchers. And they dress him head to toe in spiritual armor, sword, shield, helmet, breastplate.
And he is going to desperately need every single piece of it, because the very next day, he goes down the far side of the mountain into the Valley of Humiliation.
And there waiting for him, he meets a literal monster.
A Collion.
And we absolutely need to describe this thing for the listeners. The imagery is wild.
He has scales like a fish, which represent pride. He has wings like a dragon, feet like a bear, and fire and smoke are constantly coming out of his belly.
Apollyon violently confronts Christian. But before they actually cross swords, they have this intense legalistic argument.
Apollyon claims that Christian is rightfully one of his subjects. Why? Because Christian was born in the city of destruction. Apollyon says, "I am the prince and god of that country."
Christian freely admits it. He says, "Yes, I was born in your dominion, but your wages were death."
So Apollyon tries a different tactic. He tries to bribe him to come back. When that fails, he gets incredibly nasty.
He uses Christian's own history against him.
Right. He accuses Christian of all his recent failures. He yells, "You fainted at the slough. You tried to bypass the wicket gate. You slept and lost your role. You are nothing but a hypocrite."
This is such a brilliant depiction of spiritual warfare. The enemy isn't just a scary monster. It's an accuser using your own actual sins to paralyze you with shame.
But Christian handles it perfectly. He admits his sins. He doesn't deny them, but he claims the overriding mercy of his prince.
And that's when Apollyon completely loses it and attacks.
Yeah.
He says, "I am void of fear, prepare to die."
This physical fight lasts for half a day. It is brutal. Apollyon is throwing flaming darts like hail. Christian is severely wounded in his head, his hand, and his foot.
Understanding his intellect, his faith, and his walk.
Exactly. And then it devolves into a desperate wrestling match. Apollyon physically knocks Christian down to the ground. Christian's sword flies completely out of his hand.
Apollyon stands over him, ready to deliver the final killing blow. It really looks like it's over.
But as God would have it, Christian reaches out in the dirt, grabs the hilt of his sword, and thrusts it upward into Apollyon, crying out, "Rejoice not against me, O mine enemy! When I fall, I shall arise."
It's such a cinematic moment. Apollyon spreads his dragon wings and speeds away. Christian wins, but it's a very costly victory. He is battered and bleeding.
He is healed with leaves from the Tree of Life, but there's absolutely no break in the tension, because immediately after the Valley of Humiliation comes something even worse.
The Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Yes. If the first valley was about outward physical and theological combat, this one is pure inward psychological horror.
It's pitch dark.
Yeah.
There is a deep, endless ditch on the right side and a bottomless quagmire on the left side. The path itself is exceedingly narrow.
One wrong step in the dark and you are dead.
And right in the middle of this valley is the open mouth of hell right by the wayside. Flame and smoke are pouring out, and terrible noises.
His sword is completely useless here because you can't stab a shadow. He is compelled to put away his sword and use the weapon of all prayer.
But the scariest part, as you alluded to earlier, is the profound confusion of his mind.
Right. The text says that wicked fiends stepped up softly behind him and whispered hideous blasphemies into Christian's ears.
But because of the darkness and the confusion, He verily thought they proceeded from his own mind.
This is an astonishingly modern insight into mental anguish and intrusive thoughts. He honestly thought he was the one blaspheming God, and it tore his heart apart.
He didn't realize it was an external attack. He took ownership of the darkness.
Which is the ultimate trap of despair. But the turning point comes suddenly when he hears a lone voice far ahead of him in the dark reciting scripture.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil.
Hearing that changes everything. He realizes he's not alone. Someone else is surviving in this valley.
And then the sun finally rises.
Which is a relief, but the daylight reveals that the second half of the valley is actually far more dangerous physically. It is completely covered in snares, nets, and hidden pits.
If he had tried to navigate that second half in the dark, he absolutely would have died. But as he says, his candle shines on my head, and he walks through it safely.
As he finally comes out of the terrifying valley, he catches up to the person he heard singing. It's a fellow pilgrim named Faithful.
Faithful's a great foil to Christian. They walk together and catch up on their respective journeys. It turns out Faithful didn't have the exact same troubles Christian did.
Right, their paths reflect different personalities. Faithful entirely escaped the Slough of Despond, but he was heavily tempted by wanton, representing fleshly lust.
And he was brutally beaten by an old man named Moses, representing the crushing weight of the law.
As they talk, Evangelist unexpectedly shows up again and gives them a very dark warning. He says, "You are coming to a town where enemies will strain hard to kill you," and he specifically prophesies that one of them will die there.
They're approaching Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair. It's a massive, sprawling market fair kept all year long by Beelzebub himself.
And they sell absolutely everything there. Houses, lands, honors, titles, gold lusts, bodies, and souls.
Bunyan is delivering a scathing critique of the world system here. The commercialism, the obsession with the temporary. He makes a point to note that even the Prince of Princes, Jesus, went through this fair and bought absolutely nothing.
The pilgrims enter the town, and immediately they cause a massive hubbub. They stick out like sore thumbs.
For three main reasons. First, their dress is totally different from the locals. Second, their speech is different. They speak the language of Canaan, not the slang of the market.
And third, their values are completely alien. They refuse to even look at the shiny merchandise. They put their fingers in their ears again, crying, "Turn away mine eyes from vanity."
So the merchants are offended. They aggressively ask them, "Well, what will you buy?"
And the pilgrims give an answer that seals their fate. We buy the truth.
That simple phrase enrages the entire town. It's a rejection of everything they value. The pilgrims are beaten, smeared with dirt, thrown into a cage, and made a public spectacle.
And eventually, they are put on trial for their lives. The trial scene is a brilliant, dark satire of the corrupt legal system of Bunyan's own day.
The presiding judge is Lord Hategood.
And the witnesses against them: envy, superstition, and pickthank.
They testify that Faithful creates disloyalty, condemns their local customs, and speaks treason against their prince Beelzebub.
Faithful defends himself boldly. He doesn't cower. He basically says, "Loyalty to my God requires opposition to your vanity."
But the jury goes out to deliberate, and the jury members' names are just a masterclass in allegory.
I have to list them because they are hilarious in a very dark way. Mr. Blind Man, Mr. No Good, Mr. Malice, Mr. Love Lust, Mr. Live Loose, Mr. Heady, Mr. High Mind, Mr. Liar, Mr. Cruelty, Mr. Hate Light, and Mr. Implacable.
It's a literal rogues gallery of human vices sitting in judgment over a righteous man.
And their verdict, of course, is unanimous. Guilty.
The execution is horrific. They scourged him, they lanced his flesh, they stoned him with stones, and finally they burned him to ashes at the stake. Faithful is martyred.
But the text gives us this incredible image right after. It says that waiting just behind the mob was a chariot and a couple of horses.
Yes. As soon as his adversaries completely dispatched him, he was taken up into the chariot and taken directly to the celestial gate.
He took the ultimate shortcut to glory.
Christian, however, is strangely remanded back to prison for a time. But eventually he escapes. And when he leaves Vanity Fair, he's not walking alone.
Right. A new character named Hopeful rises up out of Faithful's ashes.
Hopeful was an actual resident of Vanity Fair who watched the trial. He was converted not by a sermon, but by witnessing Faithful's unwavering conduct and joyful suffering.
So even in his brutal death, Faithful bore fruit.
Exactly. Christian and Hopeful continue the journey together, and they soon run into some really interesting, very frustrating characters, primarily Mr. Bunyan.
Bunyan from the town of Fair Speech. He represents the ultimate religious pragmatist.
He has this famous quote. He says, "I am always most zealous when religion goes in his silver slippers. I love to walk with him in the street if the sun shines and the people applaud."
Wow. Silver slippers. He only wants faith if it's currently popular, profitable, and stylish.
Right. He brings along his friends, Mr. Moneylove and Mr. Hold the World. And they have this long, sophisticated debate with Christian, arguing that it's actually a good, pious thing to use religion to get rich and advance in society.
And Christian just shuts them down with a scorched earth theological argument. He tells them plainly, you cannot follow Christ for loaves. If you use religion to gain the world, you will ultimately lose both.
But the temptation of wealth doesn't end with buy-ins. Soon they reach a delicate, very comfortable plain called ease.
And at the far side of it, a little hill called lucre.
Lucre meaning money, or filthy lucre. There is a silver mine open on the side of the hill.
And standing there is a man named Demas, inviting them to come over and just dig a little bit. Come see a thing, he says.
Christian sees right through it and flatly refuses. He knows the ground around the mine is treacherous.
But Bunyan and his friends, they jump at the chance. They go over to the silver mine, and the text says whether they fell into the pit or tricked on the damps, they were never seen in the way again.
It's a stark warning about greed pulling people off the path.
But right after expertly navigating that temptation, Christian and Hopeful make their own biggest, most devastating mistake yet.
They do. The road they are walking on gets incredibly rough with sharp stones. Their feet are sore. They are exhausted.
And they look over and see a beautiful, soft, green meadow right alongside the road on the left side. Bypath meadow.
There is a stile, a little set of wooden steps going right over the fence. Christian looks over the fence and says, "Look, a soft dirt path runs right alongside our hard, rocky way. Let's take it. It's so much easier."
Hopeful is hesitant. He's the younger believer here. He says, what if it leads us out of the way?
But Christian, using his seniority, easily persuades him. They hop the fence.
And it seems perfectly fine at first. The grass is soft. But then night falls. It gets completely dark.
They hear a man ahead of them in the dark named Vain Confidence. Suddenly they hear a terrible crash and a groan. Vain Confidence has fallen into a deep, unseen pit and dashed himself to pieces.
Panic sets in. Then a massive rainstorm starts. The floods begin to rise around them. They realize they're completely trapped in the dark off the path.
They huddle together under a little shelter, and eventually, out of sheer exhaustion, they fall asleep.
And in the morning, they wake up to find a massive shadow blocking the sun. A giant is standing right over them.
Giant despair.
This is hands down the darkest sequence in the entire book for me. The giant accuses them of trespassing on his grounds. He violently grabs them, drags them to a stronghold doubting castle, and throws them into a dungeon.
A dungeon that Bunyan describes as dark, nasty, and stinking to the spirits of these two men.
They are locked in there from Wednesday morning until Saturday night, without a single bit of bread, a drop of water, or any light.
Giant Despair has a wife named Diffidence, which means lack of faith or self-doubt.
She is just vicious. She tells her husband to go down and beat them mercilessly.
Which he does. He takes a massive crabtree cudgel and beats them until they are completely immobilized on the floor.
Then the next night, Diffidence tells him to take it a step further. She tells him to go down and suggest suicide.
He tells them, "Why should you choose life? Seeing it is attended with so much continual bitterness. Just end it."
And the shocking part is, Christian actually considers it. He is so broken. He says to one, "Hopeful the grave is more easy for me than this dungeon."
This is the absolute lowest point, the mighty hero of the story. The guy who literally fought a fire-breathing dragon with a sword and won is now huddled in a dark cell contemplating ending his own life.
It is such an honest portrayal. It shows that even the strongest, most experienced believer isn't completely immune to severe clinical depression.
Because that's exactly what this is. It's a deep depressive episode. It's dark. You are getting beaten down by your own relentless thoughts representing the giant. And you have this voice of diffidence constantly whispering, "It's never going to get better. Just end it now."
Hopeful is the one who steps up here. He talks Christian off the ledge. He reminds him of his past victories over Apollyon and Vanity Fair. He reminds him of the commandment, "Thou shalt do no murder."
Hopeful carries Christian through the darkest night.
But there is this really weird, fascinating detail about the giant that Bunyan throws in. He has fits.
Yes, I love this detail. In the text, it says that sometimes, especially in clear weather when the sun shines, the giant falls into a fit and totally loses the use of his hand. He gets paralyzed.
Sunlight literally paralyzes despair.
It's a beautiful, profound psychological observation. Despair thrives entirely in the dark. It needs isolation and lack of perspective to function. But when the light of truth or simple grace shines in even just a little bit, despair loses its grip. It cannot function in the light.
That sets up the escape so perfectly.
Yeah.
They are in there for days, starving and bruised. And suddenly on Saturday night, they start praying. They pray all the way until Sunday morning.
And right as the day is breaking, Christian suddenly sits up violently and says, "What a fool I am to lie in a stinking dungeon when I may as well walk at liberty."
You remember something?
He says, "I have a key in my bosom called promise that will, I am fully persuaded, open absolutely any lock in Doubting Castle."
He had the key in his pocket the entire time. He was locked in a cage. He had the key to.
That is the ultimate tragedy and the ultimate hope of the scene. He didn't need to forge a new weapon. He didn't need to physically fight and overpower the giant. He simply needed to remember what he already possessed.
The key of promise represents the scriptures he knows, the core assurances of God's love. They were always with him, but the trauma and depression of his circumstances made him completely forget they were there.
So the way out of despair isn't brute physical force or sheer willpower, it's memory. It's actively remembering what is objectively true, even when all your internal feelings are screaming that it's completely hopeless.
He pulls out the key, puts it in the dungeon door, and the lock turns effortlessly. The door flies open. They unlock the outer gates, they escape the castle grounds, and they run all the way back to the King's Highway where they are finally safe.
They even put up a warning sign at the stile to prevent future pilgrims from making the same mistake, and then they move on.
Following that trauma, they finally reach a place of extreme beauty, the Delectable Mountains.
This is a vital time of refreshment in Emmanuel's land. They are warmly welcomed by 4 shepherds whose names are known for experience, watchful, and sincere.
The shepherds take them to the top of the peak called the Hill Clear, and they hand them a perspective glass, basically a telescope.
They tell them to look far off into the distance, and through the glass they get their very first actual glimpse of the gates of the celestial city.
Though the text notes that their hands are shaking so much from the trauma of giant despair that they can hardly hold the glass steady to see it.
But they see enough to renew their hope.
Before they leave, the shepherds give them a map and some very specific warnings. Beware the flatterer, and whatever you do, do not fall asleep on the enchanted ground.
As they descend the mountains and get closer to the end, they meet a character who is going to be incredibly important for the finale. A young, very confident lad named Ignorance.
Ignorance comes bouncing down a little crooked lane from the country of conceit and merges right onto the main path.
He completely bypassed the wicket gate, the cross, the whole difficult beginning.
Christian asks him directly, how do you expect to get in at the final gate when you didn't start at the wicket gate? You don't have a certificate.
And Ignorance's answer is fascinating. He says, "I know my Lord's will, I have led a good life. I pay every man his own. I pray, I fast, I pay tithes."
He's a total moralist. He firmly believes his heart is inherently good.
Christian challenges him heavily on this. He quotes scripture saying, "The word of God says there is none righteous, no, not one. The human heart is deceitful."
But Ignorance just smiles and refuses to believe his heart is bad. He completely rejects the core Protestant idea that he needs Christ's external righteousness to be imputed or credited to him. He entirely trusts his own internal goodness and his own works.
They realize they can't convince him, so they leave him behind for a while.
But soon after, they run into another trap. A man wrapped in a beautiful, glowing white robe.
The flatterer.
He looks almost exactly like one of the shining ones. He says with a big smile, "Follow me, I'm going to Zion too."
But he subtly leads them down a path that curves away. And suddenly a giant net drops down and traps them both.
And as they are struggling in the net, the white robe falls off the man, revealing he is completely black with sin underneath.
They realize they forgot to look at the map the shepherds explicitly gave them. A real shining one has to come down over, cut them out of the net with a sword, and severely physically discipline them with a whip for ignoring their instructions.
Painful lesson learned. Moving on, they encounter a man coming the exact opposite way, laughing his head off. Atheist.
Atheist is pure cynicism. He asks them where they are going, and when they say the celestial city, he just laughs harder.
He says, "I've been tirelessly looking for this city for 20 years. I've been further than you. There is absolutely no such place."
It's a fairy tale, boys. Just turn around and go back home and enjoy the world.
But Christian and Hopeful are immune to this now. Why? Because they have actually seen the city through the telescope on the mountains. They have experiential knowledge. They reject atheists' empty cynicism entirely.
They push forward and enter the enchanted ground.
This is the place the shepherds warn them about. The air here is heavy and magically makes you incredibly drowsy.
To stay awake and fight the supernatural sleepiness, they force themselves to engage in, quote, good discourse.
They share their personal testimonies. Hopeful tells this beautiful long story about how he was converted, how he tried to reform his own life and failed until he learned to completely trust in the righteousness of a man who never sinned.
Talking about the gospel literally keeps them awake until they finally pass through the enchanted grounds safely.
And then the landscape completely transforms. They arrive at the land of Beulah.
It's the lush, beautiful borderland of heaven. The sun shines constantly night and day. The birds are singing.
They can see the celestial city clearly now with their naked eyes. It's built of glowing pearls and precious stones. The streets are paved with pure gold.
They are so close. But there is one final, terrifying obstacle.
Between them and the Golden Gate is a river, the river of death.
And as the text plainly states, there is absolutely no bridge over it.
The pilgrims stand on the bank, terrified. They ask the ministering spirits standing nearby if the water is deep.
And the spirits reply, you shall find it deeper or shallower, precisely as you believe in the king of the place.
So they have to wade in. They step into the freezing water. And Christian, the battle-hardened hero, the man who fought Apollyon, the man who unlocked Doubting Castle, immediately starts to sink.
He goes under. He cries out in terror. The billows go over my head. He is completely overwhelmed by a supernatural darkness and horror.
He starts remembering all the sins he committed both before and after he became a pilgrim. He is suddenly terrified that he's going to be ultimately rejected by the king.
It's a profound pastoral point by Bunyan. Death can be an agonizing struggle, even for the most faithful, devoted believer. Christian's hypersensitivity to his own sin makes the river incredibly deep for him.
But hopeful, the simpler, younger believer finds firm ground almost immediately. He physically holds Christian's head above the rushing water.
Hopeful is shouting encouragement over the roar of the river. He says, be of good cheer, my brother. I feel the bottom and it is good.
He comforts Christian, reminding him of Scripture. He yells, Jesus Christ makes you whole.
And when Christian hears that specific phrase, the darkness breaks. His faith completely returns. He finds the solid ground. The terrible enemy in the water is stilled, and they finally cross over to the other side safely.
On the far bank, two shining ones are waiting to meet them.
They ascend the massive hill up to the city with zero effort now because they have left their heavy mortal garments, their physical bodies, behind in the river.
They are welcomed with an explosion of joy, trumpets blowing, bells ringing, the entire heavenly host shouting.
They walk up to the Golden Gate and they present their certificates, the sealed rolls they received all the way back at the cross.
The king examines them and commands the gates to open.
Enter you into the joy of your Lord.
They're instantly transfigured. They are given garments that shine like gold harps to play and crowns for their heads. It is the absolute ultimate triumph after so much agonizing pain.
It's a beautiful ending,
But
but
the book doesn't actually end there. Bunyan includes one final short scene, and it is arguably the most chilling moment in the entire book.
yes, we cut back to the river to see the fate of ignorance.
Ignorance finally arrives at the bank of the river of death. But unlike Christian, he doesn't struggle in the water at all.
No, he has a completely easy, peaceful crossing. A ferryman named Vain Hope is there and simply takes him across in a little boat.
He walks straight up the hill to the Golden Gate. He confidently knocks, expecting to be welcomed in with a parade, because, as he said earlier, he lived a very good moral life.
The men looking over the top of the gate ask him, whence came you, and what would you have?
He cheerfully tells them, I ate and drank in the presence of the king, and he is taught in our streets.
So they ask the standard question. They ask for his certificate.
Ignorance fumbles around in his bosom looking for it, but of course he has none. He bypassed the wicket gate. He never went to the cross. He never received the Spirit's seal.
He just stands there in absolute silence. He realizes too late that his own goodness means nothing here.
The king is informed that a man is at the gate without a certificate. The king refuses to even come down to see him.
Instead, he commands the two shining ones to take ignorance, bind him hand and foot, and take him away.
And they carry him through the air and cast him into a dark door hidden right in the side of the heavenly hill.
And this is where Bunyan writes one of the most sobering, unforgettable sentences in all of English literature.
He writes, Then I saw that there was a way to hell, even from the very gates of heaven, as well as from the city of destruction.
It is terrifying. You can be that incredibly close. You can be moral. You can be polite. You can be religious. You can have an easy, peaceful death. You can literally be standing at the Golden Gate.
But without the certificate, without true broken reliance on the grace of the cross, You were entirely lost.
And right on that massive, heavy note, the narrator suddenly wakes up. And behold, it was a dream.
Wow. It's an incredibly heavy ending, but such a powerful one.
It perfectly reinforces the entire core message of the book. The wicket gate, the burden falling at the cross, the scroll, these things aren't just optional suggestions for an easier life. They are absolute necessities. There are no shortcuts.
So what does all this mean for us today, for the listener?
I think it forces us to deeply examine our own internal burden. What are we actually carrying around? And more importantly, where are we trying to get rid of it?
Are we trying to numb it in the slough of despond?
Right. Or are we trying to just work it off by being a nice person at the village of morality?
Or are we heading straight for the wicket gate?
And are we willing to look like fools to the world? Are we willing to put our fingers in our ears, shut out the crowd, and run screaming for life?
That's a whole lot to chew on. We really hope this deep dive into the Pilgrim's Progress gave you a brand new appreciation for this gritty, intense classic.
And maybe it encouraged you to just keep walking no matter how many lions are roaring on your path.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Goodbye.